Have you faced some big challenges in your life? You are not alone. Being inspired by others who have faced similar challenges is what helps shine light on your path. And here are those stories. Hi, I'm Greg Crawford, and welcome to the Challenge to Triumph show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Challenge to Triumph show, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, Geo. And I know Geo quite a few years now. We actually met at a mastermind that we were a part of. And Geo is skilled in a few areas, but one of his biggest skills is speaking. He's a motivational, inspirational speaker. He travels. He has a really great way of bringing a message. And I know he works with a lot of kids and speaks to a lot of kids, and he's making a big impact in the world today. Geo is also a writer. He's got his own book out. Geo, welcome to the show, bud.
Thank you, man. It's good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, man. What's the name of your book?
The name of the book is The Thirst is Real.
The Thirst is Real. Yeah.
Yes.
So you wrote that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I wrote that back actually in 2014.
Yeah. So Geo, what's up, man? I always start the show off by asking a question. What is one book or person or both that had a major impact on your life and helped you where you are today?
I will say the book for me was Peaks and Valleys. I believe it was written by Spencer Johnson. And the reason why I love that book is it kind of talks about how to make the most of the good times and how to manage the bad times. Because I think in life, you're going to get both. Like, there's no one who's like, I had my life sucked the whole way through, and no one has my life was great the whole way through. So obviously there's those peaks and valleys in life. And the book actually tells you a story about someone who went through that and how to kind of maximize both aspects of your life so that you can live a more balanced, satisfying, fulfilling lifestyle. So that book was huge for me. And
I'll
then
get that. I never heard of that book. I'll have to read that.
Please read it. And it really is great because they kind of teach you principles, but through a fictional story. So it's not like, oh, it was a real person. So you kind of almost feel like you're watching a movie, but learning as you're watching a movie at the same time. So I kind of felt like I was being tricked, Greg. I was like, this guy's tricking me with an interesting story. And then I'm like, oh, snap, there's a lesson. There's a lesson there. So it was really, really well done. I think he also wrote the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh, okay. I read that. Yeah.
I read that one. Yeah. So he wrote
Peaks
that
and
book.
Valleys. That's great because that's kind of like the concept of this show is taking someone that's stuck in a valley and telling these stories of people that have been through the same valley and, moving forward to get to the peak,
Exactly. I think that book is definitely a must read. And it's a quick read. So that one is definitely huge.
Awesome.
Huge. And I think in terms of what you said, the person that influenced me, I know you know this guy, but my mentor, one of my biggest mentors is Paul Reddick.
Paul Reddick.
Truly just blessed to know the guy. And as we'll talk later about it, but he definitely has helped me to find the better version of myself. And one of the things I will say is, he wasn't my cheerleader. Let's put it that way. So he wasn't like, like when you watch a basketball game or a football game and the team is losing, but the cheerleaders are still cheering. Like he was the guy who told me the real, He was like, you really suck right now. And I think sometimes a great mentor knows which button to push. And he knew that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he helped me a lot, and that's how we met was through Paul.
Yeah.
And he's quietly under the radar, helping a lot of guys. And definitely great guy.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Geo. So let's take it back a little bit, buddy. Let's take it back in time. Give me a time when you were really faced with some type of challenge in your life.
Sheesh. Oh, how many can I tell, right? So but no, when with that question, it literally brings me back to this one moment. I was at the time I was working for one of the people that I really admired at the time. And I had an amazing job, Greg, where I had the opportunity to work remotely. So I was making very good money, never having to leave my house. I probably left my house like once every 2-3 months to go to the office. So this was like amazing. And at the time I had this, I was in a relationship that I was in for like about 4 or 5 years. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. I'm only working this job to marry this girl, and we're going to live this beautiful fantasy life. And then one September, I end up losing my job. You know, like I kind of got that breakup. You know, when somebody breaks up with you, and they're like, you know, it's not you, it's me. That kind of thing. So
totally
I got
unexpected,
that.
huh?
Totally unexpected. You know, I got a phone call literally, and it's funny that we're talking about this because I was just reading about this in my book. I was reading this exact episode, and I'm looking at it, and I pick up the phone, and I'm smiling. I'm like, yo, oh snap, he's calling me this morning? Oh, this is great. Little did I know that the phone call was to relieve me of my duties as an employee.
Okay.
And so now I'm in this thing, and I'm super shocked, and you know, have no idea, like, how am I gonna make money next month? Like, what the heck am I supposed to do? Because I thought this was like, it was in the can. I was like, yo, in 5 years I'm gonna take over the company. It's gonna be amazing. Like, I thought everything was already written, and it just fell apart for me. And the only reason I was really motivated to work was to get into my relationship. And what happened was I lost the girl and the job around the same time. So now I'm in a rut. You know, I'm living in my parents' house. I do nothing. Like, I'm like a vegetable. All I did was eat and play video games for 9 months straight. Like, I did nothing. Just like rock bottom. I just lost purpose. Because, you know, for me, my job fed my relationship, and my relationship fed my job. I now have none of them, so now I'm in a famine.
So what happened at the 9-month mark where you're like, okay, I need to get myself in gear and I guess find your purpose?
I needed to be reminded that I had a purpose. That was number one, right? So like, I think I was in a state of, everybody knows this, where we get to a state where we're so depressed that we only attract more depressed situations. It's almost like you get a flat tire and you literally slash the other 3 tires. Like that's kind of self-sabotage, you know. So I could never see the peak, like we talked about earlier. All I could see is valleys. I could never fathom it. So I told stories about why life sucks, and all these things. And then one of my mentors, actually Paul Reddick, he hits me up and he challenges me, and he tells me, you know, Geo, I know you're a man of faith. I know you believe in God, and you post all these things online about how you believe in God and you pray and all these things. But how is the way you're living your life right now honoring your faith? And I was like, what? I'm like,
that's
what?
pretty real.
The nerve of this dude. I told you he keep it real. So I'm like, is he serious right now? So you're challenging my faith? Like, you know, sometimes people are like, you can criticize me, but don't criticize my religion, right? Like, so he came at me and just told me, you know, how does that honor it? And I kind of processed it and realized, like, if someone was to look at how I was living my life, would they believe in God based on the way I was living it? And that really hit a nerve in me and made me realize that even at the bare minimum, my purpose is to reflect who I believe in, you know.
Right. And question yourself, like, you know, if I'm going around and saying this is what I believe, why am I not living that?
Right. And that's, and I think what happens, Greg, and I think whenever we have these tough situations, I think the thing that's critical is stopping the bleeding. So like when something's going bad, we normally just don't pause. And we think like just stopping doesn't mean you fix the problem, but just taking, like you said just now, to question. When you question, you're pondering, which means you pause for a second just to analyze the situation for what it is. And at that moment when Paul spoke to me, it forced me to do some self-evaluations to start to question, what do I really believe what I say I believe? And if that is the case, then why don't my actions match my belief? And then I just made that switch of saying, you know what, I'm going to just live out my beliefs. And it wasn't perfect. And it wasn't like the next day I woke up and all of a sudden I wasn't playing video games and eating food that my parents kept on cooking for me. But I just at least got out the bed a little bit faster the next day. You know, I wasn't, you know, I actually walked out of the house and said, yo, let me just get some air or something. But I think that's the key thing is like, how do we stop the plane from, like, the plane is going down, but like, what do we do to keep it up just a little bit, you know, kind of stabilize it for a little bit so that you can get some awareness, so that you can get the lesson from the challenge. Because I think that's the key thing. And I love the name of your show, the Challenge to Triumph show, because I think challenges are really designed to teach us so that we can triumph.
It's hard to see that when you're going through it. And I think that's why it is so important to have people or somebody in your corner that's going to, you know, say, you know, shed some light on what you're going through and give you a little direction or push or even belief in yourself. Because sometimes when you're going through a major challenge, you start to not believe in yourself and you start to dwell.
No, I agree. I think that is why depression is so dangerous, because it normally makes us we normally put ourselves in like a solitary confinement. Like we think no one realizes, no one knows what we're going through. I don't want to be ashamed of who I am in this moment, so I also push people away and stay to myself. And I think that, you know, I'm truly blessed to have someone who didn't let me stay in that. You know, I think some people, you have people who love you and they let you stay the way you are. And then there's people who love you and won't accept you staying the way you are because they know there's a better version of you somewhere in you. And I think I've been fortunate to have those kind of people in my life that would tell me, Geo, you know you're better than that. Like, kind of like I saw myself when I look in the mirror as a cat, but the person who was on the outside said, there's a tiger in the mirror, but you don't see it. And I think because we tell ourselves the bad story so much, that bad story starts to feel like a fact, like it's proven, it's true.
Right.
And I think it's important to interrupt that. And sometimes maybe somebody's listening to this and it's like, hey, Geo, Greg, you guys are lucky. I don't have a Paul in my life.
I was just going to ask you that question. I was just going to say, what if somebody doesn't have a Paul to grab you by the shirt and lift you up?
Yeah. You know what it is? I found this to be true. The best way to ruin your pity party is to go and kind of crash somebody else's. That's the best way to get out of your own pity party. So there's always someone, Greg, that has a worse situation than you. No matter what you're going through, there's someone who has it worse than you. And what I found is the minute you take your hands off your problems and put it onto somebody else's problems, I have found that God touches my problems for me. It's almost like, yo, hey, I'll take care of it since you left it alone. And I think that's the key thing is like let go of your past. I think sometimes we make our past our home, and that's the worst thing. You could visit it to get some motivation, to go and get inspired, whatever. But remember, your past should at most be treated like a hotel where you check in and check out. Do not make your past your home. So
that's a good analogy.
Yes, one of the things I say is like, go crash somebody else. Find somebody else with a worse problem than you. And I bet you, like it sounds pathetic. Like you like, oh, really? Like, haha, look, you're suffering. But no, go help them in their suffering. So then that way you could start to feel good about yourself. Even though your situation didn't change, you impacted somebody else's situation, and that makes you feel good. And that little bit of feel good automatically makes you break the pattern, that cycle of it was going bad, and now you're like, yo, just for a moment I had a feeling of significance, a feeling of contribution, and those are high level needs that we all need to have anyway. So I would tell somebody, if like you don't have a person like that, be that person for somebody else, and you'll see the way the life works is when you give, you get back.
And I think you got to put yourself in different experiences and different feelings. You know, if you're going through something, if you're going through a major challenge and you don't have anybody there to push you or lift you up, you got to put yourself in those positions where you're feeling differently.
Oh, no,
So
absolutely.
you ever hear of author Dr. Joe Dispenza?
That name sounds familiar to
He
me.
wrote
Tell me more.
he wrote this book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And my wife is reading it right now, and she's pretty much dictating the book to me. But this guy, I mean, he speaks at all the Hay House events and all that stuff. You should really look him up.
What is the
But
name of the book again?
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he
Got it.
talks about how like your thoughts create these feelings, which create your reactions in life, and it becomes like a vicious cycle. So the only way you're going to really break that cycle and have things happen differently for yourself is when you start feeling differently. So you have to put yourself in a state of feeling differently, whether it's mentally, physically, and just embodying a different feeling. Because when you do that, then your thoughts will begin to change and your habits will change, and then things will happen differently to you, and for you.
That's
It's really,
amazing.
yeah, it's
I
a
love it.
really interesting cycle he talks about. So, yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah.
All right, so you got yourself out of the 9-month rut of eating really good mom and dad's food and playing some cool video games. Um, Now, in the beginning, it's all great. You get that little push. I'm going to make things different now. I'm going to change, and then it happens where like you hit that wall again, right? Where it's like
Hmm.
you kind of want to like give up again. How do you keep
Yep.
going?
The way to keep going is to have something big enough that you really, really care about. I think if you have nothing, like no goal, no aim, then you will live life aimlessly, right? Like that's just the way it is. So I think for me, I wanted to be a husband one day. I wanted to be a father one day. I wanted to own a business one day. So I feel like the reason why when we hit that wall again, why we stop is because we just took our eye off the target. And it's
Mhm.
even more dangerous if there is no target, right? So it can't just be for the sake of just feeling good. I just want to feel good, right? I think that is too vague. I think you need to have something that's super big, super exciting, that makes you go and say, you know what, it's worth the price of this hurdle that I'm gonna go and face. Because you're gonna face it. Like you're gonna have a problem.
Yep.
You're gonna hit that wall. But the thing that makes the wall not deter me is the fact that my vision for what I want to get is so big. Like the wall is not bigger than my vision. It'll never be. But I think the only way to do that is to have created a vision for yourself that is that large. I think most people, they just have something super small. And then what happens is the wall is bigger than the thing they were looking forward to, so they can't even see it. Right? So it's like
Yeah.
almost like when we talked about the valley. I only will get out of the valley if I could even see the peak. Right? But if I don't see the peak at all, it's sometimes very hard to get the motivation to
Yeah.
get out of the valley because you might be so deep. But I think what I'm saying is create something that's so big that even in the valley you can see it, even though it means you're still far away.
It
But I
gets
can,
foggy in the valley.
yeah, right. Like so those are the things where I think it's important to like, there's a book called by David Schwartz called The Magic of Thinking Big. And I think the magic of thinking big is like, it literally almost makes everything an okay situation. The worst situation, you're like, it's worth it. It's gonna pay off. You're not saying that for something super small. You're only saying that because the thing is big. Because if the thing was small, there's no magic. Like there's no motivation enough to go and say, okay, I'm gonna get off the couch so I can run a lap around the block. Like that's not exciting. But if I say, oh, I want to run a marathon, now that's something huge, and that's something monumental that could go and sustain you for a longer period of time. So I think the key thing is to have a big enough vision that's it's so exciting that even when something bad comes up in the journey,
Yep.
you still are so caught up in what it would feel like to accomplish X that Y doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I remember when I met you, I remember back in the day, you were like kind of known as a copywriter. You were a good writer, I remember.
Yep.
But then, like, as me and you were in the same mastermind group together, that's when your real mission started to come out. That, you know, and I knew you were a man of faith, but I saw like that transition where your mission started to come out, and that's when you started doing the speaking and getting in front of like large groups, especially kids and things like that. So what are like some of the steps you took to like really start to build your vision?
I asked myself, what is something that I would do if money wasn't a problem? Okay. Like if all my bills was taken care of, what would I be doing with my life? Like every day.
I like that.
Like what is the thing that you know what it is? I think we always chase money, but I think the question we should ask is what is the thing that if there was a law created that said you could no longer do it, you would pay to break the law? Like literally. So I think for me,
wow,
motivating people. Oh my gosh, Greg! Like I one time did a fast, Greg, where I said and I'll just tell you the trick. The best time to do a fast is in February because there's less days in the month. So that's what I did. So I took a fast and I said I'm not posting on social media for 28 days. And I was getting itches because all I do on social media is motivate and inspire. So now I was feeling so bad that I had to cut it off. And in my mind, I was just like, you know what? If Facebook told me, you know, like sometimes people like start sharing stuff, Facebook is going to charge you for your account. I would gladly pay Facebook to let me post because it's my breath. That's my air. And I think that's the key thing that I found was like one of my pastors, he said, Geo, what would you do if money wasn't an option? Like if God said your bills is covered, what are you doing for the rest of your life? And I was like, I'm going to be inspiring people. That's what I would do. And he was like, well, then you don't have to wait to let that happen. You can start doing it now. And I was like, wow, really? And I started doing it, Greg, and I started doing it little by little. And I started seeing the impact of it, even on the smaller scales. I was talking to 5 people. I was talking to 12 people, not speaking to 500 at a college in Vermont, but I was speaking to 5 people in a room. I was speaking to second graders, like you know, in a museum, you know. And one of those moments came, and I had a moment where I broke down in the middle of a speech because of a kid was going through some bullying at home and at school. And I felt like if he doesn't find relief or some type of help, he might kill himself, you know, because he doesn't have an outlet. If I go home and get bullied and then I go to school, those are the 2 places a little kid goes to, school and home. So if I'm not safe in either area, then probably the only safest place to be is not on earth. And that's what I was thinking. And so I literally broke down into tears in the middle of my speech when I realized that was this young man's reality. And I started to realize, man, like this is way more, like that's more valuable than money to me, is to save a life because life is priceless. So I think that's the key thing is like, what would you do? Like you would love to do so much that you would even pay for admission to actually do it. And I think if you get to that point, oh my gosh, like you start to vibrate on a different level. Like you're on fire. Like you can't be stopped. Like if something is free and you're willing to pay for it, then who's going to stop you? Like just yourself. So I think that's the key thing, really is to get to that place. And like you said, the transition. I used to make money writing, marketing stuff, but there's nothing more fulfilling than helping another person.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. I like that question though. I wrote it down. That's awesome, man. So what are you up to today? Like what's Geo's mission?
Today, right now, I've had my company. We just celebrated 2 months ago our 2-year anniversary. My company's called 2020. Thank you. It's tough. I beat the first year. I thought I was gonna quit, but so the company's called 2020 Living, and the whole purpose of it and why I named it that was because I felt like The good book says that without vision, people perish. And I remember Helen Keller said that the sad thing is people who have sight but no vision. So I was like, yo, that's this thing about vision. Like if people
Wow.
really saw what they could be, then they would they would be excited to live. And I feel like a lot of people, Greg, are not living, they're waiting to die.
Wow.
There's a big difference. They're not living, they're waiting to die. And so what my company does is we create experiences that allow you to get a new vision. So basically, we give you 2020 so you can see your situation clearly. And when you see it clearly, then you fully engage in what that actually looks like and live your best life. So that's pretty much what we do. So whether I go to a middle school, a high school, a college, business conferences or anything like that, the whole purpose is to get them to take their glasses, which life will get your vision impaired. Like it's going to happen. Someone's going to throw mud on your glasses. It's not clean. And what we do is we create an experience to get you to see clearly, or to at least identify clearly define your life. What does it mean? I remember somebody said, don't let somebody else write your obituary. You write it yourself. Right? So what does that look like? What does your life represent? What's on your tombstone? What's your writing? Like, what would you want it to say? And then work backwards, right? So reverse engineer it. So that's really the whole thing we've been doing. So I've been traveling the country speaking, doing a lot of different little mini events locally to just help people do that. And I truly believe that we can't have enough of it. We need it. We need to understand the reality, like what we are capable of. And it's a lot more than we think.
I love that, man.
It's a lot more than we think.
I love the 2020. At first I was like, what's 2020? And then it's so much sense, like the way you explained it.
Yeah, it hit me. It hit me when I thought about it, Greg. I was like, yo, man, like what could I call my company? And I always knew I just wanted people to live a bigger life. Like I just knew like the people, like being around people like yourself, seeing people who are owning things, right? So all my life I thought that you had to be owned, but not own. Does that make sense? Like, like you were owned like I'm an employee of a person who owns a company. But when I got around people like yourself who owned stuff, I was like, oh, you could actually be an owner? Like, and that it was that exposure that allowed me to get a new vision. Like, because I was around people who had bigger visions than me. So I would encourage people who's listening to this, don't hang around I'm not saying alienate the people who may not have big visions, but you need to have some people in your circle that have larger visions that kind of stretch you. So then that way, when you're stretched, there's more room to deposit the greatness.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think that's the key. So when I see like Greg own a gym, sells a gym, does these things, he goes from New Jersey, decides to pick up and move to Florida. I'm like, oh, that's possible? Like,
don't follow me too closely.
No.
Know what could happen.
I mean, I always tell people don't follow somebody too closely because you'll get into an accident, right? So you don't want to. Like, I don't want to rear end you, but
I'm kidding.
But at the same time, I think that's the key is seeing it. And I know obviously you've made your mistakes. I've made my mistakes as well. But I think that what you did and being around people like yourself, it expanded what I thought was possible. And I think that's the key thing. Everybody wants options. I tell people all the time, I've been saying this for the last 3 months. The difference between a rich person and a poor person is that the rich person had choices. The poor person did not. So when a rich person goes to the restaurant, every option on the menu is an option. Mm-hmm. But a poor person goes to the restaurant, they only could choose a certain amount of things. So I really believe, like, if I told a rich person, hey, you got to eat filet mignon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that person will start to have the same feelings that a poor person has because they didn't have a choice. So I want people to have choices. Like, I want you to say, like, oh, I don't have to just be an engineer. I can create a business and help people online or whatever your dream is. I just want you to know that it is possible. And being around people like yourself, I had the opportunity to see that. And once I saw that, I was like, man, like Greg doesn't have a special trick. It's not like Greg, when he goes to the bathroom, pees on one leg and hops or something like you don't like, he's a regular person, right? Like everybody else. So if you could do it, then I can as well.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. I love what you're doing, by the way. And I love the 2020 vision. And because, there's so many people that really need that, and they need that clarity and that inspiration and the motivation. So Where can people find you and like stay connected with you, Geo?
Yes. On Instagram is Geo Derice. So it's GeoDerice on Instagram. That's the same thing for Twitter.
Are
Same
we
thing.
are we friends on Instagram? I don't even know. Are we
I
following?
don't know. We're gonna be now.
I'm
Make
new.
sure I
I'm
follow
new on
you.
Instagram. I'm trying to
You gotta get on
figure
it,
it
man.
out.
You gotta get on it.
What's
Yes, I'm
weird?
on
What's
Instagram.
weird for me with Instagram is I have like friends and people that I'm following, and they're following me, but it doesn't actually always have the person's like full real name, like Facebook. So sometimes I don't know who it is that's actually liking my post.
Got it. No, that's true. That happens a lot of times because there's some
I don't
people
know. I
who
find
got,
that weird.
different programs. So is your name on Instagram Greg Crawford Inc.?
Yeah.
Got it. No, you were. I didn't know you had Instagram. I just saw it. You were following me.
All right, good.
I didn't see it before, so we're good. No, but yeah, they could follow me on there. I post videos. I make posts all the time. Facebook is the same thing.
I need some 2020 once in a while.
Listen,
my
man,
vision
I'm
gets a
telling
little
you.
fuzzy.
You got to make sure you wear your shades. You're in the sunshine state now, so
Yeah.
you gotta keep your glasses on.
All right, so where else, bud?
Yeah, so just those are the places. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can find me at Geo Derice, GeoDerice, and then my website is geospeaks.com. So that's where I do all my all my speeches and stuff like that. You can find me on there. And then if you want to email me, I love to stay in contact. I know that the people who's going to be listening to this are going to be the type of people that I would love to engage with. So if you want to email me, you can email me at geo@geospeaks.com.
Okay, and I'll put all that on the blog and in the show notes and stuff like that. So
Super, man.
It'll always be there.
Got
Geo, it was really good catching up to you. And
I love it, man. Keep doing what you're doing. I think I think sometimes people think like, man, isn't there so much personal development stuff? I'm like, yo, there can never be enough. Like, what are you talking about? Like there's like look at a supermarket. How many tomato sauces, ketchups, types of bread, milk, so that means there's a flavor for everybody. And I truly believe this idea of challenge to triumph, really what you're doing is you're speaking life into people. You're telling them, man, the challenge is going to lead to your triumph. And I think that I love that it's already in the title. So keep doing it, man. I had a blast talking to you, and we got to do this again soon.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy.
All right. Be good.
All right.
Hey, if you love the show, make sure to keep following us on iTunes. It's the Challenge to Triumph show. And also head over to challenge2triumph.com and, follow the journey. Stay a part of the journey. I'll be sending you some really valuable emails and keeping you up to date with who the next guest will be on. So let's stay connected. And if you got a lot of value out of this show, please go over to iTunes and leave a positive review. It would really help boost the show. And thank you so much for listening. Take care.